Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Rathman. How are you, dear?
I'm doing great. I think the bigger question is, how are you doing? Because you've been traveling all over the place.
Oh, for Christ's sake. Let me take my pulse and see if I've still got one. Oh, my God. Oh, and I got my ugly cheater glasses on. Okay. Yes, I have been traveling all over the place, although I will say, and I'm just going to put this out in the universe, last weekend up in Michigan was one of the best experiences of my entire life.
Wow.
Something very magical happened up in Michigan, and I am not free to go into much detail or depth about it, but it personally affected me in a way that lifted me up as if I were being carried on angel's wings.
That's
and so
amazing.
Yes. Well, you know, the live stream from the farm was difficult. It was very emotional. It was, had a real impact on my family, even more so than me. And I knew that it wouldn't be an easy thing, but
Right.
I didn't anticipate it being so dark and dense at points. And I just needed something to lift me up. And I went off a few days later. I flew back into Orlando, and 2 days later, at the crack of dawn, I posted the pictures of the sunrise from the airport. It was spectacular. And off to Michigan I went. And, then, of course, we did the show from my friend Cass's house in Ann Arbor last Friday night. Had all kinds of activity.
Tons.
A ton of activity. Anybody that's watching tonight that was watching last Friday night and you saw what appeared to be an apparition in the back storage pantry, I do believe that was an apparition. I had a few people screenshot it and enhance it, blow it up for me, and it looked remarkably like my dearly departed sister. Who loved Cass, loves Cass like crazy. I mean, just ate her up. So it wouldn't surprise me. But we also had apparently some unidentified aerial phenomenon going on throughout the show. And it began when we were doing our AV check with Bill and everything prior to the show is when it started immediately. So that was interesting. Anybody that wants to see, all the weirdness that surrounds us, there it is in last week's show. But on to this week, I have to take a moment to tell you about this remarkable man. And Tony, I didn't really have a chance to talk to you this week, but I was over the moon when my friend Frank Chili put this gentleman in touch with me. And the first time that he called me was several weeks ago. And I saw a phone number coming in that said California. And it was 10 o'clock in the morning. And so, I answered the phone thinking, it's probably one of my producers that is just using a different phone. I'll just answer it. It's California. What the hell? And he identified himself. And I think one of the first things I asked him was, what the hell are you doing up at this hour? Because, if it was California, it would have been 7 o'clock in the morning. But then he explained that he was actually on the East Coast, which made more sense to me. And we started talking and we didn't stop. And we've spoken several times since. And I am transfixed and mesmerized by his intellect, the depth of his experience. It would take me a half an hour to go through his biography and his history as an introduction. So I think the very best thing to do is to bring Mr. James Martinez onto the show and let our audience see for themselves what dropped into my lap from the universe. How's that?
It's a nice introduction. Thank you very much.
You are quite welcome, dear. It is so good to welcome you onto a World Awakening. I think that this is a perfect fit, based on everything that we have discussed. We talk to each other like we've known each other for at least a millennium. So that's good.
Yes.
But, I think like-minded in many ways. But what you have to offer to the world needs a platform and a forum that will reach many more people. And so for me to be able to play a small part in that is, Erin says welcome. She's one of our very regular. She's great. The people that watch this tonight will then share this with everyone they know. And that's the way that information is passed and burgeons. And so what I want you to do first and foremost is to introduce yourself and give our viewers, our listeners, your background, whatever you wish to disclose, and then we can hop right in.
Well, certainly. When people ask me that question, I immediately almost don't know where to start. But I'll do my best to give you a kind of biographical situation that makes sense for everybody. Usually, when people ask me, well, "What do you do?" I've been involved with a lot of things in my career, and I usually end up saying, after I've kind of explained myself, "Well, I'm a media ecologist." And that was a phrase coined by the late Marshall McLuhan, but it was something that was labeled to me way later in my life, after a working relationship with a gentleman that was kind of my mentor and one of my best friends, and was the leading expert in mind control and the main whistleblower in 1978, way before the subject matter was even discussed. And he's the one who kind of labeled me that. But I didn't just land in Walter's lap. That came about because of experiences that I had starting in England, where I was going to school on military bases. And I used to be a avid track and field athlete, and that was my life. I wanted to have a career in an athletic career. And while I was in high school, I was kind of aiming my life toward that. And one day, while I was out running at night, I had my first unknown experience with something I couldn't even call it a UFO. I don't know what it was. And at that time, this was in the early 80s, that experience changed me entirely. And after many years, that led me to Walter Bowert's door. But everybody on this probably broadcast has probably seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And yeah, and all I can say is the effect on that event that occurred when I was living in England was like Richard Dreyfuss. My internal being was altered and augmented and kind of put on this need for more information, because I knew that there was a much larger reality that was going on that I knew at that time. And this was in the 80s, and there was no information anywhere about unidentified flying objects or anything of the subject matter. Not in any library, nowhere. So there was nobody to talk to at that point in my life. And I didn't dare tell anybody about that. But that event altered the course of my life. And because of that, I became curious, cautious, suspicious, investigative. All those kind of issues took over my life discreetly, because I did not talk to hardly anybody about it until much later in my life. And when I began my athletic career, I was asked to go to the top ranked school for track and field in the world, which was actually in Arkansas. So I was at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. And that was the height of my career, which also ended at that location because of injuries that I had, and also information that I found out when I was living in Arkansas about our back then presidential leaders, Bill Clinton. So what ended up happening is I dropped out of college because I just didn't feel I was being told the truth about what was going on. And I felt that my education was a betrayal of some sorts. And I left school and ended up living in near Palm Springs, California, at which time I began looking into all the activity that was taking place at the Integratron, which was dismantled at that time. And prior to that, I had been discreetly investigating the whole UFO thing for a long time, and knew all the key players from Betty Hill, Barney Hill, Dr. Andrea Perron, Wendell Stevens, John Mack, people that at that time were outsiders and were very discreet in communications, because back then the internet had not started. Everything about communications and the subject matter was totally different back then. And I was involved with a woman by the name of Marianne Shennefield. She was like my instructor, my teacher, one of my main teachers in life. And she was the working protege of the late Dr. Andrea Perron. For those that people don't know, Andrea Perron, he was the gentleman that was brought in by CIA to develop psychic warfare, counterintelligence, intelligence for the United States when Russia was way ahead of us at that point. So there was two people in Perharch's camp. The really famous one was, we've all heard of him, his name is Uri Geller. And the other female counterpart was Marianne Shennefield. And I got involved with the second half of MKULTRA's exposure of mind control because of my relationship with her, because she was one of the very few abduction cases where there was actual physiological change to her biology, but mostly to her eyes, because she went blind, but developed brain sight that was, she was kind of enhanced by her experience. And I was being flown to visit her in Massachusetts by her request, because she located me in California when I was doing an interview in Tucson, Arizona, on a UFO case. Specifically, I was talking about my experiences with Doris Van Tassel, who I lived with briefly, and got the full lowdown of what actually took place in the 50s. So I was working with Perharch and Marianne Shennefield, and I did an interview in Tucson, Arizona, and that's what led me to my relationship and meeting with Walter Boert, who was, at that point, he was the top guy in the world on mind control. And when I met him, both of us had very similar childhoods, and we're both adopted children. And he had a deep understanding of how I was as a person, and we became best friends very quickly. And it was because my relationship with Marianne Shennefield is how I got involved with the second edition of Operation Mind Control, the Researchers Edition, which was the updated version from the original one. And it there began a completely new life and a new reality to live with, a new knowledge, way more knowledge than I ever dreamed of I would get in this lifetime about what goes on behind the national security curtain, which is a completely, totally different world that we're not allowed to play in. So
yeah, we're not privy to any of it. No, we're not.
No. So he was very interested in all my relationship and what I was doing with Marianne Shanafield, because at that time, the development of all the remote viewing programs and remote sensing programs were still being worked on with Perharch at SRI International. And nobody knew who Marianne Shanafield was except a small amount of people. Betty Hill knew her, Uri Geller knew her, Perharch knew her, Bud Hopkins knew who she was.
Yep.
And she was an extremely private lady who never really wanted a lot of attention. She was very conflicted about it. She had enormous amounts of personal problems because of what was done to her, but she had enormous amounts of knowledge having to do with human perception and the abduction phenomena as it actually was. So my contribution to the whole MKUltra mind control issue was the confirmation of how a lot of these abductions were being faked, because MKUltra was about behavior modification. So I brought that aspect in, which was new at that point. Nobody knew that in the early 90s, how that was being done. And a lot of insiders inside the Pentagon that knew us, Fletcher Prouty, Colonel Fletcher Prouty, Colonel Tom Bearden, a host of psychologists and psychiatrists that didn't want to be known for any of this, were all looking at the basic commercialization of human capital in the form of children being used and co-opted with the entire UFO field. There began a completely, totally different life. I would consider it a privileged life because I had the inside view of the plan for humanity, which is where we're at today, which is why I'm taking a more active participation in kind of educating and hopefully inspiring the public to get off their knees, basically.
Well, in terms of brainwashing, I think humanity could use a really good brainwashing cleansing of the gobbledygook that, we talked about this privately. If somebody had asked me 50 years ago at the age of 13, if this is what the world would be like now, I would not have been able to conceive it. That was my personal paradigm shift, which I discussed with you when I saw an entire flotilla of ships pass over my home. It wasn't just one big ass ship. It had a whole bunch of escorts around it too. And 45 years later at the Star Works Symposium, somebody talked about it and had it right down to the month and the year and the experiences of people worldwide. I have never been able to reconcile why it happened when it happened to me. But I felt like you do, extremely privileged. I had no sense of fear. And, that was one of the things that I wanted to ask you when you saw what you did as a young man. What emotions did it trigger in you?
Well, I was running at night, and I love running at night. And I did most of my training in the evening after school. And I remember the exact location. And I thought at the time that I had broken some law or had crossed into somebody's private property and a big light went off. But that was quite different because I used to be deaf when I was younger because of childhood trauma stuff. And the first thing I thought is I can't hear anything. There's no sound going on here during this event. All the animals and the bugs and the mosquitoes. And
same with me. Nothing. Absolute silence. Not bird song. Nothing.
Yeah. And that was the primary thing that didn't concern me, but it concerned me to question my own sanity and if I was awake or dreaming, because I went into an altered state. I didn't know that at the time, but it was a altered state, and I thought I was in trouble because I was on somebody's property. But then when the sound all went out during that event, then I knew it was something much more. And there was no depth of field. I couldn't tell if it was close or if it was far.
Same with me. I could not. And I thought it was just because I was so young that I just didn't have a well enough developed depth perception to be able to tell. I've talked about this. I'm like, I do not know if it was the size of Giant Stadium or if it was the size of Manhattan. It was huge.
Yeah.
But I really couldn't tell you how huge it was. But yes, I felt very much that same altered state. And then when it passed over, I was suddenly back in the house and peering out the window through lace curtains, looking up to see if I could see anything. And I remember my mother asking me what I was looking for. I don't remember going back in the house. I don't know how I got outside the house. I have no recollection of that. I don't know how long I was outside. All I know is that it moved over like glass, like as smooth as a freshly frozen, elegant. Yes.
Elegant. Mm-hmm.
It's so soft and beautiful. And I felt absolutely no fear, none. It was just pure, utter fascination. But to this day, I don't know what happened in that time where I felt like I was in a bubble and it was absolutely silent, no sound at all. But all I do remember that I felt no fear, and I know it blew my mind, and I don't know in what way I was affected. If I left the planet, if I don't know. I don't know. I'm 50 years. It's been 50 years. And I still can't tell you exactly what happened to me that day, but it changed everything.
Yeah. That was the catalyst which altered my future, because I knew it was. I didn't know what it was, but I knew there was intelligence to it. But I didn't know what intelligence, where, why, anything. Anything like that at that stage of my life, it never was an issue, or I even thought about any of that stuff ever. My mind was on my athletic career, primarily 100%, and this came in and altered the course of my entire life to this point. And those chain of events led me to Walter Bowert's door. Mm-hmm. And I gave him the missing link of information that he was looking for, because he was suspicious that a good portion of the abductions were in fact simulated sexual attacks on people that were used. Yeah, he was concerned that the abductions were being faked, which we knew they were, and they was later admitted to us in the early 90s about that, to discredit the real ones, because the real ones were the big problem. And one of the biggest problems in the world was this woman who I knew very well, and she was gifted with the ability to use more of her brain than the normal person. So mm-hmm. if people look up Marianne Shennefield UFO, they'll find information about her, but she was very private about a circus being formed around her because of her newfound abilities. And she gave important information on the development of all the remote viewing programs. And she knew Ingo Swann and Price and Geller and Baharich, and she knew all the people that were involved as they were developing that. But she'd been altered. She had a kind of cognitive upgrade, shall we say, a big one. And it allowed her to, while she was talking on the phone, she could look at you and take a look at your RNA and DNA and describe it to you and tell you who you'd been talking with and see it in various ancient archetypes in her mind sight. So when I was first introduced to her, I almost couldn't believe it until I went to see her in person. And then I understood why and what was really going on. And it was her and I were the influence of the aspect of Operation Mind Control and where it was going. So when we published Operation Mind Control Part 2, the Researchers Edition, then we gave a much larger panoramic perspective of our capabilities, because in the 90s, I was given, and we knew the plan for the United States and the world and what they were going to do. But at that time, when I was told from like Colonel Fletcher Prouty, I don't know if people recall who he is. He was chief of operations for JFK. He was in Oliver Stone's movie JFK.
Yes.
He confirmed what we knew and knew that there was going to be world government introduced, but how they were going to do it was another thing. And then we confirmed with him, after we were exchanging information, that the battlefield of the 21st century was going to be the brain and human perception itself. And in 1990, around that time, the internet was just coming in. Communications were completely different back then. It took much longer to compare notes on things, and the trust gaps for meeting people were much different than they are today. And it was a much more different way of presenting information. I have a lot of problems with the whole UFO field because it's mostly commercialized now for money. There's tons of disinformation about it.
Yep, tons. And it's tons. Deliberate. It's absolutely deliberate.
Yeah, it's horrible. So I have kind of stayed out of that. I don't need a book deal or a movie deal or anything like that I don't need media validation per se. I've never really gone after that. I've always been from the persuasion, if you have this knowledge, don't just talk about it, do something about it. Resolve the problems. I've always been about resolving problems, not explaining problems or just doing commentary on problems. And when we released that book, we knew the plan for humanity. But in the 90s, we knew about the child trafficking. We knew about all the brain chip integration with the central nervous system. We knew the plans for that. And we knew that they were going to essentially hijack, through technological insertion of technology into society and cultural conditioning and so forth, how they would harvest and kind of do a cognitive takeover of how communications are used today. But in 1990, I did not see any of that anywhere. And at that point, even though I had the privilege of dealing with really high level people, I just couldn't believe and didn't want to believe
didn't want to believe
that we would get to this point. And so what we did is we were tried to sell the movie rights of Operation Mind Control, because Walter Bort and I felt that the only person qualified to make a movie out of that was Oliver Stone. And eventually we did get meetings with Oliver Stone, and it was way too much for him to handle. Way too much. We came into the office willing to give him all the technology, all the proof, testimonials, and people that were going to come forward to assist in him doing a movie of the real history of the United States. And he couldn't deal with it at all. It's too overwhelming for him.
That was the word I was going to use.
Yes, because brain perception research has been an ongoing, highly funded operation since World War II. And there is enormous amount of money that's used in weapons of war for the capture, captivate, hijack reality of warfare. So um, we were, our goal was to take the technologies that we had learned about that the government was doing on the public without their consent or knowledge, and try and enhance humanity and liberate it from the upcoming position of where it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're at the point now where they basically, the powers of the be, which are the World Economic Forum, the international, and the families that have essentially engineered society for the past 1,000 years, maybe longer,
Mm-hmm.
have decided that we're no longer needed, and we're going to be gotten rid of, or we're going to be chipped. And that's already occurred, because behind the national security curtain, people are already chipped, and there are already cybernetics. And all of this was confirmed over me from 1990 up to present day through lots of experience and meetings that I've had privately with top scientists, people at MIT, Harvard, DARPA, Pentagon, all of it, for a long time. And I just never thought that we would get in this position where, like Jim Angleton used to say, deception is a state of mind and the mind of the state. And he was head of counterintelligence for CIA, and how our general consensus means nothing and has no relevance whatsoever, because we are limited on the amount of information that we are given about the truth about what's really going on. So I was put on the board of advisors of the Freedom of Thought Foundation, which was the first public forum to protect cognitive liberty, freedom of speech, the right to legislate your own consciousness or alter it if you choose to, of your own accord. That is a spiritual position. Walter Bart was a very spiritually inclined person, and one of the main proponents that we publicly stated was the repeal of the National Security Act, because it's because of the National Security Act that nobody has been arrested, nobody's gone to prison,
No one
nobody's
has been held accountable. Nope.
Nothing. And that is why, because people don't even know the definition of national security. But that was put in place because of a lot of things, mostly because of the advanced technological exchange that happened between extraterrestrials, and also all the research R&D that was going on at DARPA. It was originally ARPA, but DARPA, about the extension of the central nervous system and what we call the computer today, which is an extension of our central nervous system, which that goes into a whole other field of media theory and the works of Marshall McLuhan. But today, the most important thing anybody that can take from this is, if you just look at it from a very spiritual perception, that this moment in time where we're at is the most important in history.
Yes, it is.
It's been planned.
Mm-hmm.
If you're here to go through it, you chose to be here to go through it.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, and the moment to take a stand and take back your sovereignhood while you can is absolutely right now. I just so you know, I really don't get off on doing interviews ever. I've never really promoted myself or done anything like that because
I'm honored. I am so honored that you joined me, honey.
Nothing against you. It's not about that. I've been always like, well, let's fix the problem. Let's fix the problem. Let's fix the problem. But it takes an enormous amount of time to unlearn what you've learned, because I've done deprogramming for cults. I've created cults. One of them still alive and well now. I did that while I was on the radio in another situation. I'm going to uncover and go public about all that in the probably next year, because of all the collateral damage it's going to cause with a lot of money and a lot of prestige and whatnot. But people need to examine their own perceptions and understand perception itself as a gamble. And they probably need to take a long, hard examination of their own neurological reality tunnels on how they view the world, and realize that what they see, hear, taste, and so forth is a very small fraction of what actual information your senses are picking up and your conscious mind is throwing away. Because everybody's individual perception is a choice, but the powers that be wanted to control all the information environments and alter your relationship with technology, and then harvest the effect of that technology to prepare and condition everybody to put them into this box. That part of my motivation for doing this is because of it's time for everybody to wake up, obviously, but also because of what Facebook just did.
Yes.
Which is, there's nothing noble about what just happened there. Nothing.
No, nothing. Absolutely nothing. No.
Yeah. So,
and there was nothing progressive about it either. It was a deflection technique.
Sure.
You know, that's all that it was, is a deflection technique disguised as a step forward. But Facebook, you know, and I use Facebook constantly. I stay in touch with multiple thousands of people that way and try to get my own messaging out through it, which is almost counterintuitive when you consider, you know, it's predominantly used to emotionally manipulate people. You know, and that is, you know, I would love to sit down with Mark Zuckerberg and just tie that man to a chair and talk until his ears bleed, because of the damage that he has done. The damage that he has done is horrifying to me. You know, but I understand what you're saying. I want to be very much want to be a part of the solution, because you can only be one or the other. You can either be part of the solution or you can be part of the problem.
Right.
Here's my fear, James. How easily people who you would assume are, just by their own commentary, the way that they carried themselves, their intellectual prowess, you would assume that they were wide awake. Right. And yet you go a little below the surface,
right,
and all of a sudden you realize that they are not only being manipulated, they're willingly ignorant. Willingly ignorant.
Right.
And
correct.
That horrifies me, because they can masquerade as something that they are not. They're just buying into the bullshit in such a way that it is creating and then disseminating it in such a way that it creates an almost wave effect. And, you know, part of the raising of the vibration of the planet, part of the, you know, going from carbon-based DNA to a crystalline-based DNA, which is, you know, what all that's going on with the extraterrestrials, our galactic family, is it's almost like we're just too stupid to get it. We just don't want to be awake. I use capital W-E, humanity, the human race, doesn't want to. It's just easier to stay stupid. It's easier to stay asleep. Right. And the thing is that I think on some subliminal level, they already know that if they wake up, they can't go back to sleep. And so they're just taking the easy way out, cruising through life, collecting the paycheck, keeping the roof over their heads, keeping the car running, food on the table, and they're satisfied with that. Right. And you know what I say about that? Vulgar as I am, fuck that noise. That's not why we're here. What we need to do is understand who we are, why we're here, and where we came from.
It's very important. I concur 100%. And You know, everybody's heard or probably experienced in their own town, you know, driving down the street and they go around the curve and they say, you know what, they really should put a stop sign there because there's gonna be an accident one
There's
day.
going to be an
It's
accident.
gonna be an accident. So I go around and I'll tell my friend and I'll tell this person over here, I'll tell the police even, you know, they really should put a stop sign there because there's gonna be an accident. Then 6 children are killed in a car accident, and then they put the stop sign there. So humans only learn through pain, stress, and shit.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
And the good thing, the only good thing.
I'm so excited. I'm sweating. Honest to God, when I start talking about this stuff, I literally, you know, and you're absolutely right. This is the thing that I talk about all the time, that we are in soul school. This is a spiritual endeavor. And unfortunately, in 3D, which we are trapped in and pecking our way out of our little shell, one little tiny, you know, puncture at a time. Unfortunately, the test always precedes the lesson. We have to fail first before we can succeed. But we are on the precipice of disaster. Yes. And if we don't make an effort, a real concerted effort right now to wake up and do something, this is the beginning of the end for humanity.
That is 100% totally correct. And I spend a lot of time meeting with people privately because I'm sent to them to what I refer to as do a pattern interruption. That would be the same thing as if I poured ice water over your head, behind you without you knowing.
Yes,
it would shake you up. It alters the nervous system briefly, and the person snaps out of the trance that they're in with their own beliefs and their own physiology and so forth. And then at that point, when there's a small bandwidth of time to insert some new possibilities and knowledge in there, that's what you do. Because I've been in the behavior modification business for a long, long, long time. And I know the behavior modification business was started and was born in the United States. The self-help industry was born here. You didn't see too much of that in Europe at all. No. If you wanted to get that, you'd have to go to a psychologist or psychiatrist. But here it was being commercialized, and it was being commercialized because of the ongoing experimentation that was happening on civilians and all the missing children that were happening. You know, people can be conditioned to have whatever their value system is. It can be conditioned to them, inside of them, without their consent and knowledge. And
isn't that called religion?
That's part of it, yeah. Those were the first mind control training facilities, I call them, in the world, is to separate you from God. And it's over there, and you're here. It's there, you're here, you're separate. And when really it's not, you're one. And the temple is your body and your mind and your soul. That's the original church. And all of those things can be conditioned in. But when they were developing at CIA, neuro-linguistic programming, that was used in conjunction with MKULTRA and MKDelta. What Delta was the operational name for MKULTRA, where they were altering human behavior and testing human behavior to see what it's capable of. And I'm telling you, and you probably know this already, but perhaps some of your audience does not, that a good deal of the people that we call elected employees, they're not really there. They're not who they say they are. Somebody else is operating them. Their own core person you've never seen before. In other words, I'm saying is that a lot of them have deep fractured personalities. The shall we say, the concierge personality is the one you see in public that is a so-called elected employee. And those wind-up dolls have been put in all over the place. All over the place. And it's very difficult to spot if you're not trained and able to see all the micro muscle movements and incongruencies happening in human behavior. And the most famous of all of them is Barry Soetoro. That's Barack Obama. That's his real name. This is a guy that's gone through major trauma He has a glossed over personality. His core identity was shot a long time ago as a child. I know people who knew him when he was Barry and worked with him as a young child. And the person that you see and the person everybody seems to know, that's not him at all. It's not even close. It's not even close. His core personality was destroyed a long time ago. So these type of capabilities and structures, there's millions of dollars spent on this, millions of dollars in R&D. And these the people that are stood out front, well, the people with all the money and the power sit behind the scenes because they would never, ever show their face. They're starting to show their face now because they know they're in a dominant position. But all the people that are running the show behind the scenes, they put up their fake personalities to go run countries and run big companies and speak on behalf of Defense Department contractors and so forth. And they're not real. They're incongruent. They're broken people. They're disassociated. Part of the problem and part of the conditioning that's happened to the U.S. public is that we're desensitized from violence completely. I mean, I don't know what you have to say to get through to some of the fucking skulls out there, but there's over 500,000 children that go missing each year, and nobody says shit.
That's right.
Nobody.
Yep.
Now, who are we as citizens, who are we in our value system not to have taken care of that shit a long time ago?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, when the pandemic first hit, I was watching a program about the homeless population of children in New York City. 165,000 homeless children living on the streets of New York. What kind of society allows that to happen? You know, if, when a society no longer has any care or concern for its own future, which is its children, it is a society in decline that will inevitably crumble and deteriorate and cease to exist. And in terms of child abduction, in terms of child sexual abuse, it is open season on children. And it has been since time immemorial. I had this discussion today with a woman who was actually a paralegal that I was working with on an entirely different issue. And I said, you know, I said to her, I was reading an article today from about a new book that's just been released by a great historian who objects to calling the Middle Ages the Dark Ages. He objects to the use of that language to describe that period of time prior to the Renaissance. Because, you know, this, and this happened that was a good thing during that time. Well, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You know, Mr. PhD, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. We're still living in the Dark Ages. And if we do not rise to the occasion of the paradigm shift, if we do not rise to the light, we are doomed. We are doomed. And I am sorry, but it's right around the corner. Doomed.
It's time to everybody, like when all the Epstein stories came out about the child abduction and all that other stuff, we knew about that in the early 90s. And when I was told that by Boert, other psychiatrists, psychologists, some military knew that that was the currency of the elite is children. Back then, there was nobody to talk to. And when you get into that subject matter, I mean, you can hear a pin drop. People don't know what to say. They don't know how to respond. They do nothing. And we were getting into very dangerous waters investigating all that stuff. Because if you get into a certain section of it, you're going to be in big trouble. So Walter Boert was punished for writing that book, Operation Mind Control, in 1978.
Punished in what way, James?
In the worst way possible. I can't. There's some people that are still alive
Okay. No, it's okay. I get it.
And I and many other people have, it's dangerous business being a whistleblower, and it's dangerous business telling the truth. And he
It's
learned
why
that
I've been
firsthand.
selling my last book privately for 2 years and have
Yeah.
not put it out internationally yet. But I'm
Yeah.
ready to do it. I'm ready to do it. I've been told that it's time. They've told me.
Everybody, I take calls from all over the place. I just spent about a month with the next person in line that's been selected to be the Prime Minister of England and his girlfriend, in meetings in California, Florida, Texas, in different international conference calls with leaders. And I was essentially asked to come in and educate him about what's going on, not only in the technology world, but also in that world. And you would think, with all the millions of dollars and all the so-called humanitarians that are in this country, that they would have managed to fix this child trafficking issue a long time ago. And the best that we could do is put it on the back of a milk carton, and nobody even looks at that. The problem is so massive, and the effects of the problem. The effects of the problem. This is why it's so serious, and why people need to deal with this right now. And what we learned when we were studying all the cases of child abuse that we had, we discovered that the abused child later in life responds in one of two ways. They will either abuse themselves, or they're going to abuse you. And they got no problem with it. And that's what they do. Abusers abuse. And the government knows that. So they put people in positions of power that have been in abuse. That's why we have a lot of pedophiles that are running governments and running big corporations, because they're desensitized. They don't have empathy. They're reenacting what was done to them on a large event. And this has been bred into our culture because we lost track and we lost responsibility of our children.
Yes.
And when I was
I can validate this as well too, because for a decade of my life, I worked with sex offenders, all boys. With all the boys that I worked with over the course of that decade, hundreds.
Yeah.
The sex offenders, and as young as age 12. Every single one of them was a product of abuse. Every single one of them was perpetuating the cycle of abuse. Not one had found a way out of it. And we were so proud because our recidivism rate, we got our recidivism rate down to 60%. That's amazing. That we were able to break that cycle with the psychological work that we were doing, the treatment, the compassion, the work that we were doing. The recidivism rate with sex offenders is in the 90+ percentile, not just nationwide, but worldwide. And so it was something that I studied long and hard. I also learned that male victims deal completely differently. It rewires their hard drive completely differently than females do. There is almost an inbred desensitization of females. It's almost like we're born knowing this is probably going to happen to us at some point in our lives. And you just have to suck it up and live with it. Because there is virtually no accountability. It is the rare exception to the rule that there is recourse, that there is justice served, that anybody goes to jail for it. I mean, it is just so common in our society. It literally is open season on women and children. And
Yep.
it has been for multiple generations.
That's right.
Multiple generations.
We knew that the U.S. government and military were sanctioning, encouraging, and manufacturing parents of children to abuse their children and then give up their children and then put them into the intelligence community. We knew that was going on.
Yeah, that is sick and twisted and sadistic. Yep. And in a case like that, where that kind of, and I know it's all done under the guise of experimentation. Well, so was Tuskegee, you know, so was, you know, I mean,
so this ongoing
it's no value.
Abuse.
We have no business saying that the Chinese have no value for human life.
Right.
We have no value for human life.
That's correct. That's correct. That's exactly right. And Walter and I were highly protective of children, and our lives were altered by the information that we were allowed to see. And because we had people coming to us, we interviewed Paul Bonacci from the Franklin cover-up sex scandal. Yeah. And I dealt with quite a few of those people, and the testimony that they gave about what these people are doing that we see on TV every day, going on, you know, late night TV and pretending that they're friendly, when I know goddamn well that they're full of shit. I know what they're involved in, and this is how they play the public. And these people are above the law and untouchable for the most part.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of work and consulting for Indian governments, American Indian governments. Mm-hmm. And most people in this country don't realize that genocide's been going on the reservations for a long time.
400 years.
Yes. And they resent Americans, and they resent white people, and they resent everybody because they are ignored that this fact has been going on, and they frown upon us. I've dealt with multiple different tribes, and spent the most time dealing with the Lakota, and children going missing happen all the time there, all the time. And they do it through Child Protective Services because they build cases against the families with children because they're in poverty. And they're in poverty because of the situation they were put in by the Indian Bureau of Affairs.
They were placed in poverty.
That's right. That's right.
They were subjugated and placed into poverty.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was deliberate.
It's
just another form of slavery.
Right.
It's another form of slavery.
Right. We cannot continue to go on pretending like this is not going on. Whether or not we're American Indian or not, we're all brothers and sisters.
That's right.
And this particular part has got to end. And this is where the rubber meets the road, because everybody's hearing stories online. Oh, they're catching all these predators, and they're catching them, and they're breaking apart all these groups and whatever. And those stories may or may not be true. But here's what I know is true. I have not seen any of those pedophile rings and commercialized slavery like that. The victims of that and the family members of the victims, you never see any of those people talk anywhere. You can't find it.
No.
And people better take a real good look at that when they run around thinking that the battle against this whole thing is underway and we're winning. You're not seeing all these kids that come out that are mutilated. They don't show their face.
Oh, well, I was afraid that was going to happen. Tony.
I hope we're back.
We are back. We
okay,
don't.
Sorry.
I'm doing good. We don't seem to have Andrea. Here she comes.
Okay, good.
Not for a moment do I. That was accidental. Not for a moment Do I think that that was accidental? We were getting in too deep into subject matter that was stepping on people's toes, and we got cut off, and that was deliberate.
Yeah.
I have to agree with
Typical.
that. Because
Tony, what happened to your board? What happened that all of a sudden, think back on what James was saying, everything went down, right? Went
everything
flat out down.
In fact, when I popped on, you both disappeared. That physically, even I wasn't on the screen. That's insane.
Okay, here's the thing. This smartphone started vibrating like crazy at the exact moment that you disappeared off the screen, talking about, do you see their faces? Do you see their mutilated faces? Is anybody coming forward? Etc., etc., etc. My whole phone went nuts, and now it's perfectly fine. Everything's fine. Okay, you know, I've been followed. I know I'm being tracked. I know that I'm taking a risk putting my work out. I know all of that. I don't care. I had to get to a point in a place where I don't care. This is too important not to discuss. And so, the powers that be, whoever might be offended about this, whoever might think that we're disclosing too much, that's too bad, because they are the lying liars who lie, and they are given no credence and no credibility as far as I am concerned. And you are a truth teller. Speak your truth.
So the 500,000 I was told it in the early 90s is probably 1 million by now.
Yeah.
And when I see all the stories in the press about them recovering and breaking apart all these pedophile rings, you would think, in the interest of the public and public safety and our elected employees that are supposed to be dealing with this, that I would want to see and hear directly from the people involved. And also I would want to see the children reunited with their family. You don't see that either. We see nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I've got people all over the world that I know that talk about this David Icke, and it's on this channel, and child abuse here and child abuse there. But you never hear much testimony, hardly ever, of where all these busts are happening. Who are they? I want to see the blood and guts now. Take off the Band-Aid. Now is the time. Everybody deserves to know where our missing children have gone. All of them.
Yes.
Because enough is enough. It's showtime now. It's do or die time. And if you don't assert your sovereignhood and your rights and your right to free speech and cognitive liberty right now, you're not going to make it. Because they're getting ready to, there's a couple of events that are being simulated right now that will be gigantic natural disasters, which aren't natural. And they're going to be done in tangent as the banks start to deconstruct and collapse, and what they're going to do in relation to that. So everybody needs to speak up. Everybody needs to assert themselves. Comfort is not the transition space to get things done. You have to get a little uncomfortable out of your skin and assert yourself and speak up. If that just means talking to somebody else, whatever your limitations are, go past them a little bit on this, because it's not like you cannot find the truth right now. There is more violations right now with people that I know that have security agreements. They don't give a shit anymore now because they know it's all over.
That's
It's
right.
a
matter of time.
Yeah.
That's why I've been told it's okay for me to put my work out there now.
Yep.
And my research and my work and my experiences are very important. And I'm just one person who just, had the gumption, the courage to tell it. And in fact, I'm going to film another episode next week of Open Minds for Gaia. Now, that said, Gaia might be a forum for some very interesting information to come out. Yeah. But here's the thing.
If it's for a price, then,
That's right. That's right. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
People think, oh, this spiritual network that's got, they'll probably cancel my flight if anybody from there is listening to this, but, they're part of the Fortune 500. They pay their female employees 75 cents on the dollar that they pay their male employees, even if the anchor is doing a better, has a higher following than her male counterpart. And I know someone personally who used to work for them, who, when she found out how little she was making in comparison to her male counterpart, approached them, and she was told, well, don't you have a husband to take care of you? They should be so glad it wasn't me that they said that to.
Yeah.
Be so happy that it wasn't me. But I have been approached. Here, we would like to bring you on and give you your own show. You know what? Thanks, but no thanks. I got Tony Rathman. I'll do my own show, my own way, and say whatever the fuck I want to say on my own show.
Good.
And yesterday was our 1-year anniversary. We started this show on 11/11/2020. And yesterday was our 1-year anniversary. And in that amount of time, in a single year of speaking our truth and creating our own platform and our own forum where Tony and I are beholden to no one, KGRA comes knocking and says, let us put you international. So you see, if you're barking up the right tree, if you're doing the right thing, as Jeff Goldblum said in Jurassic Park, life finds a way.
Yes.
There is a way to disseminate your message without selling your soul to the fucking devil to do it.
I know I can count on you not to sell out.
Yeah, you can absolutely count on that.
I can already tell. Which is good, because I know what's going on over there. I knew a long time ago. It's just...
But I'll use their platform to get my message out. I absolutely will use them. They don't get to use me. Right.
Good. I'm glad you set that up. Now I know much more about you just based on that. Because I was on there. I've been on there a long time ago. One of the things I was involved with when I was working with Board is I attacked all the banking cartels and took down the banks for about $850 million. And I started the credit resolution issues, and I started in radio attacking banks, actually.
Good for you.
Because I knew that they were the ones that were financing all this. So I did a long campaign to dismantle and get people out of debt. And all my archives where I was doing that have all been taken offline. A lot of the work that I've done has been taken offline. Fortunately, I have a guy that's archived everything in stable locations for historical purposes. But while I was working with Boert, I attacked the banks. We were doing deprogramming for cults. We were meeting, interfacing with people in the information moving business, Hollywood, because we wanted to utilize technology, specific information transmitters, movie makers, documentary, whatever, to enhance the human condition.
Yes.
Unlike what we see today, because I don't watch TV, but when I do, I can't believe what I see. It's so abusive. You're talked down to 24/7 on everything, all the commercials, everything. You're a loser. You're going to be sick. You have cancer. You're going to die. I mean, it's so bad. Yeah. It's so bad, and it's obvious what they're doing. And
one of my pet peeves is when my dad every night he's so funny. He has to watch Jeopardy, which I always win. He's like, why don't you go on the show? We could be like uber wealthy if you would just go on the show. I'm like, no. I would rather play Jeopardy from the sofa. Thank you. And
Right.
then after it's over on Monday nights, I think, comes the show called The Bachelorette.
Yeah.
And he's like, what is this shit? And I said, you know what, Dad? I want you to watch it for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Just watch it for 5 minutes. And I can see his skin crawling. He's like, okay, like she's got practically nothing on. And she's, surrounded by all these men. And she's like making out with all of these guys. And she doesn't even know their last names. And what is this? I said, you know what this is? This is social programming. This is what this is. This is social programming. This is to objectify and sexualize women so that we perceive ourselves as that being our only value, not intellectual value. We are just a body. We are just a vessel that has favorable whole position. That's what we are.
Yep.
Okay. And that's how we're being marketed. And that's what the young girls are emulating. And this is the most destructive thing that you will ever see on network television. And it's in the top 10 shows. You think we don't have a problem? You are the father of 5 girls. Look at this and tell me we don't have a problem.
Yeah. It's, we're being degraded, and we're going through a cognitive degrade with all the poisons of foods,
toxins,
all the toxic television, toxic media in general. And I mean, when I have been asked to go in and to talk to individuals for deprogramming purposes, one of the first suggestions that I do is the dismantling of all media influence. No TVs, no books, no radios,
cleansing.
A complete cleansing. Go out into nature on your own. Go through a true media fast. Give your central nervous system a break. Have the stimulus that's coming through your senses come from nature only. Do not talk to anybody. Do not be near anybody. Stay out on your own and learn to listen to the rhythm of your own heart, your pulse, your breath, because there's a people go through massive anxiety when they're out of touch with media.
Unplugged.
Unplugged. They go through a big withdrawal effect. And then really to regulate your nervous system and to optimize your own perceptions and your own putting you back to your heart center, you've got to unplug and get yourself away from all influence of information. I've only been able to do that twice in my life because it takes a lot of arrangements to leave society for 2 weeks and not see a soul and not read a book, no interaction with anything.
No external stimuli except nature itself. Feel the grass beneath your feet or the sand beneath your feet and look up. You want to connect to the universe. That is a prerequisite for doing so. Yeah,
it's a exercise task that I ask people or suggest people that they go through to dismantle all the constant effect on our nervous systems.
It's a barrage.
It's a barrage.
Yeah.
When DARPA and ARPA developed the internet, they knew the effect of instantaneousness and what it was going to do when they externalized and mimicked the central nervous system outside the body and what we call today as a computer. Yeah. And then they miniaturized it down to something you could put next to your body. Right. Those were like long thought out conditioning processes and training platforms to begin what will be in the future is telepathy. It's the training ground for telepathy. The mobile phone or smartphone, it's a training platform for telepathy. And when the internet was first introduced, the effects of that, they already knew what the effects were going to be on banking, on human behavior, on commerce, all of that, because they planned to make sure that they were going to control it. And that's how, with the fiat currency system that we use, they could hypothecate debt instantaneously and make money off of the usage of consumers, which is how they managed to enrich themselves because they basically, the powers that be have stolen the world through a fake currency and a monetary system that was been enhanced by the effect of instantaneousness, faster than light speed communications, and what that's
Right.
done to banking. So when I was dealing with lots of bankers, I was not only dealing with the issue of the harvesting of children, but I was also examining and going public about all the fraud in banking. First of all,
riddled with it.
there's no rule of law in banking.
No,
None.
they're lawless. They might as well be outlaws on the prairie in the 1800s.
Right.
And and it's not just the geopolitical lawlessness that we're dealing with, but that has a foundational basis,
Yes.
because all of this is tied together with money. Paul Hellier's last book, prior to his death, the former Prime Minister of Canada, the Defense Minister, wrote at length about this, and said this is what's coming next. This is the creation of a singular banking system, a singular world government. This is the dismantling and the homogenizing of money and currency. He warned about the whole Bitcoin phenomenon and all of that, and how that's infusing the system.
Yes.
And that's part of it. I
really love that guy. I sat next to him at a press conference in Europe when I was I went public about my involvement with American Indians and advanced technology and so forth. And as I was sitting next to him, it was such a breath of fresh air, because at that point in his life, I could tell he just didn't give a shit anymore.
Nope, he sure did not.
He really didn't. He had enough of all the crap. He didn't care what anybody thought. He was very direct about it, and that's just the way it was. And he wasn't intimidated by anybody. And I consider that him one of the most noble elected officials of all time.
Of all time, yes, absolutely. And I don't know if you know this about Paul, but it was in. Oh, my phone is going nuts. My phone is going nuts. Go away. He didn't even have his first sighting, saw a vessel for the first time. I believe he was 89. And he and his wife lived on a lake. And it was almost like, he said, it was like the vessel came in and it came down and then hovered just above the lake and then shot off very quickly. And the feeling that he got from that was a feeling of acknowledgement, of saying thank you, because Paul did so much good work in this field, and he never had any empirical evidence, his own experience, to back it up. And it was almost like his reward, them just stopping by to say, good job.
No, that was a pivotal day for me, because at that point I was supposed to be on stage with Russell Means, the American Indian.
Yes.
And he was a very good friend of mine, and he asked me to bring in certain technologies into the Lakota Sioux Nation. There's a movie that came out that I'm in regarding that just premiered on the Al Jazeera network yesterday, I believe. Called End of the Line. And you may recall 3 or 4 years ago about the Standing Rock standoff event where the oil companies...
Oh, I know all about it, yes.
Well, I was the trigger man that brought in the military for that. And I was asked, the real story about that has never been told. I don't think the public really realizes when there's big events with large crowds, there's a militaristic, organized aim to control the story with a big crowd, always.
Control the narrative, always.
Yeah, and nobody heard about what really was going on with that, and what the center of it was really about, and what the Lakota Sioux government knew about, that the U.S. government has been suppressing technologies, and this whole gigantic mess that we're lectured about every single day. that we're killing the earth. How dare you kill yourself? You're a human. You're a pest to the, you're leaving a carbon footprint, and the whole world's ending because of the environment. Yeah, we have polluted the world, but also the real truth is, which they don't want to say, and Greta Thunberg will never say it, nobody will ever say it, is we've had all the technology to fix everything the entire time
for
since
a
the 50s.
very, very, very long time.
Yeah.
And in fact, Nikola Tesla
Yeah,
gave us everything that we needed to be living in utopia.
That's right.
Free power on this
That's right.
earth. And
That's
Westinghouse buried it and made sure that that man was buried, died in a rat-infested hellhole, and was buried along with everything that he brought into this world.
Yes.
And as far as I am concerned, I don't know if he was a hybrid, if he was an ET that came to impart this information to us or not. But we have had, for at least 3 generations, we have had all the technology that we need.
Yeah,
Buckminster Fuller said
that's always left out of all these conversations.
Yep.
When they're jerking off on stage all over the world about the
Yep.
end of the world and the pollution and all that. Anyway, it's all bullshit. I don't understand why so many people are so fucking ignorant that they cannot figure out that we've been lied to and betrayed and deceived for so long.
That
And if
it's
we wanted
just
to clean
like
it up,
breathing.
we could have done it a long time ago. And
That's
we could
right.
have commercialized it. We could have made businesses out of it. We could have completely done this thing a whole totally different way.
Complete
they're the ones to be blamed. They're the ones to be blamed for that, not the public. They make our tools, and then our tools shape us. They shape our tools. Their tools shape us. They do it on purpose. They design it that way. It's planned that way, way in advance. I can't tell you how many people I have to explain this to, because they go, the environment and the green movement, and the green movement and all the trillions that are allocated for that. It's all bullshit, because I know the people that have the disruptive technology, multiple different versions of it,
multiple versions of it.
Any money now? Zero. They're repressing this because they want to come out with these toys after they've cleaned house here.
After they've pumped every drop of fossil fuel out of the core of this planet. After they've made every fucking dime that they can at the expense of our environment. And then maybe we'll think about healing it. And, then we'll create the carbon eating machines. And, that we can have all of that now. We could be absolutely free and clear and have zero personal debt in terms of a month-to-month expense for living with the use of just electricity around the entire world. I mean, we are conduits for it ourselves. Our bodies are predominantly water-based. We are electrically based beings.
Yeah.
All that needed to happen was just to study how we work and duplicate it technologically. Tesla did that.
We are living in we used to be living in a scarcity economy, but it's bullshit, because we're not in that reality anymore. And they have all the ability to fix this entire mess up themselves. They could commercialize it. They could cooperate and slowly not destroy other companies. They could create jobs out of it. They could do enormous things. And they'd get all the participation, because pretty much across the board, everybody I talk to, regardless of what religion, politics, or whatever, we should clean up the planet. We should. Everybody's in agreement of that, but it's how we do it. The assholes that are running everything, they're pretending like they're the authorities and we're the problem. No, they're the problem, because they won't get toilet stuff.
They are the problem. And you know what? It's really, it sounds almost counterintuitive, because on one side of my mouth, I'm like, we are all in this together.
Right.
And we are. And yet we're really not. You see, because the lying liars who lie, whether it be, the politicians or the oil magnates, or, the people that are trading literally in human lives, all of the power brokers seek one thing only, and that is the perpetuation and the retention of power at all cost. And power equals money. Money equals power. And until we have a crisis of conscience, among the money-grubbing power brokers of the world, we are in the muck and the mire of this, and there is no way out. And there is no holding them accountable, because they're the ones that handle the marionette, and we're the dancing doll.
Yep.
And all the strings are attached to them, and they call all the shots all the time, and there is zero accountability.
Right. So this is the current reality that we face, and
yes, it is.
And
it's scary as hell.
Yes, and they're getting ready to do they already essentially have done it. They just haven't finalized it and closed the gates. But the full invasion of our body by nanotechnology and chipping, of which then an organic human being will be a thing of the past. And I think before they do that, there should be a lot more discussion about that, because I didn't sign up for that. I know nobody else has signed up for that.
No.
And
well, I'm happy enough. I know there's a chip in this phone. The reason that I know there's a chip in this phone is because if I sat here right now and I said, James, my very favorite kind of toilet paper is Charmin. It's the softest kind of toilet paper. When I open my news feed in this motherfucker, there's an ad for Charmin toilet paper right there in my news feed. Okay, yeah. So, this is. I'm sorry to be so vulgar tonight. I don't know why I'm doing it.
I prefer it that way, actually.
Okay, good. That's excellent. They say, the most intelligent people do curse an awful lot. So, I think that's just the people that curse an awful lot that say that they're the most intelligent people. But, still, yeah, that's, what is that called? Catch-22, I think? I'm not sure. We are being manipulated in myriad ways. And one of the things that I am most concerned about, truly, is I very often go outside at night and look up into the cosmos every night. I am awakened at 3 a.m. every night, and I go outside to have my discussion, the discourse, the ongoing conversation that I prefer to have face to face.
Yeah.
And when I'm most frustrated and I'm most angry, and I feel like I'm needing to shed this toxicity that I feel building up in me, the more I know, the more I become intolerant of the willful ignorance that I see. And there have been, I will admit, a couple of times that I've said, get your asses down here. You're right here. Get down here. If you don't step in and intervene on our behalf now, we are lost. And the message that I get every single time, without fail, we're already with you. We're already with you.
Yeah.
So my concern, frankly, and I've never gone there to this extent with this conversation on this broadcast before. My concern is that they cannot intervene on our behalf as this chronic, sustained manipulation occurs. We have to peck our way out of our shell by ourselves, because if we don't, we won't survive on the outside of the shell, just like the baby chick.
Totally agree.
The same thing.
This is our plight.
But if they love us as much as I know that they do, and intervention is disallowed so that we can save ourselves from ourselves, which I know this to be true. This I know. like I know my own name. What can they do? How can they allow, all right, I'm not even going to go there right now. I'm going to ask you something. Do you feel that you were chosen with a specific mission, a specific purpose, that your life was changed irrevocably in a split second, and that you have a very powerful voice and are doing a very specific job on the planet? Are we literally them doing their work here? Because I truly feel like I am. And I wandered around for 50 years feeling like a complete total misfit, unfamiliar, didn't recognize this planet. Everything was bizarre to me. Figured there was some kind of clerical error made in the universe that I am here, and had to fake it. I was in fake it till you make it mode for half a century. And then, boom, I understood everything that I had experienced in my whole life, including the trauma, was what broke me open enough to not give a shit who believed me, who didn't, who was listening, who wasn't, who thought I was delusional, or who heard me as some kind of prophet or oracle. None of that is true. None of that is true. I'm a humble messenger. That's all that I am. But I feel like I was picked out of the crowd specifically to do this job. Oh, fucking A. And here we go again. Here we go again.
In the middle of the most important conversations every single time. Wow. And it's just so funny because it's not like his system was acting up in between.
At all. Not at all.
So that's just so strange. I'm sure he'll be back in a minute, but
I'm sure he will. He's probably going to smoke a cigarette. I'm putting the man through hell here.
I don't think he considers
sweating. It's 70 degrees. I'm sweating.
The entire audience keeps saying, just a huge, powerful episode, and it is, and it's one that is probably going to really catch some attention, maybe by those who need to hear it, and maybe by those who don't want to hear it being said. But I think it's important. I think it's terribly important that it is
said. Should I just text him and say, come back, Auntie M, come back?
Well, I think he got booted on the last boot, and he did come back, so I'm sure he will.
Poor James. Oh, my God. Well, the powers that be, I'm sure I'm pissing people off right now. I know he is. I don't care.
Yeah.
That's too bad, because this is a challenge to their power. This is a challenge to the protected power struggle. And, I'm really at it. Oh, now I'm waiting for a connection. Okay. Why wouldn't my phone work if my computer's working fine? It's all attached to the same thing.
Correct.
Right? It's all attached to the same Wi-Fi.
Right.
It's the only two things that are running off of it in the whole house.
Yeah, that would make no sense. You'd have to wait for a connection. None.
Man, I'll tell you what. If they shut him down, so help me God, I'll do a whole nother show with them just to piss them off. I will.
Yep.
I will. And we'll pre-record it where nobody's watching. And then we'll put it out, because then they won't be paying attention. And I will just slide it under the radar.
We can do that. We can absolutely do that.
I told you he was phenomenal. Didn't I tell you he was phenomenal?
You did. And the information and his background and what he's been involved in, just absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And you could not have picked a more knowledgeable guest on what you guys have been discussing. You just physically couldn't.
You know, I've thought for a long time that most of the world leaders were cyborgs anyway. Feels kind of good to have it validated and verified.
Yeah.
My Lord. Oh my God. All right, shoot him off an email. See if you can connect him, or if they just abducted him. You know. Oh my God. Where is the poor man?
I think I got him. Hold on. I think
You got him?
There we go.
There he is. Can you hear us, James?
Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes. Yeah, I don't feel like there's just anything at all accidental about you being ripped from this
I can hear
program
you, but
tonight.
can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. The power died. Welcome to technology. My apologies.
Yeah, well, I don't think that it was really about the power drain, the disappearance of you during that. I'm not a real big conspiracy theorist, but I know for a fact that I am being watched and monitored. I have to assume you are as well. And when we get into territory that challenges the status quo, stuff like this happens. It just does. Yeah. And it happens all too frequently on my show. Either I have little vessels in my room, or stuff happening, or technological glitches. And my phone's just been going insane over here. And then I tried to text you and it says waiting for connection. And I said, Tony, because Tony was up on the screen. I'm like, all right, I'm using the same connection for this phone as I'm using for this computer. So if I don't have a connection on my phone, why do I have a connection on my computer? Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. So anyway, so what we were talking about was being, and I don't mean this to sound, in any way, like that we are somehow, let me choose my words carefully here. Because, I'm not here to offend anyone. I'm not. There's no point in trying to spread a message of hope and light and love and peace and kindness and then alienate people. Right. But I do feel like I was put on this planet for a very, very specific reason, and that I am living into it now, and that I have been for the last decade, a little more. Finally understanding who I am, why I'm here, where I'm from, and it took 50 years, almost 50 years for that to happen. I'd say late 40s, in my late 40s. I had a real awakening and a new awareness that I was not fulfilling my destiny. It didn't mean I wasn't contributing to the planet. It didn't mean that I wasn't contributing to humanity, the betterment of humanity, for the greater good. All of that was true. All of that was true. It wasn't enough. It wasn't targeted. It wasn't specific. I was not reaching a wider audience. And I was preparing. I was preparing for now.
Yes. Training.
Yes, I was in training for now, because I think that you and I are part of the ground crew. I do. I think that we are them down here. Paula Harris is a very good friend of mine, and
she's a great lady. Great.
I just love her. And, I was bitching and complaining with her a couple of months ago, 2-3 months ago, about, I have my moments of frustration. I'm very passionate. You might have noticed. I said, Paula, I feel like I am screaming into hurricane force winds, and that my voice is being lost in the bedlam and the chaos and the overstimulation. I feel like I'm not fulfilling my purpose here because I'm not being heard. And she just looked at me and she said, they hear you. They know what you're doing. They do.
Yeah.
Just relax and speak your truth. Relax. Now, Paula should take her own good advice. That woman is so tight. Sometimes her energy flattens me. I'm going to have dinner with her next week. And I'm like, oh my God, I bet I need to prepare. I need to prepare because when we have dinner, it's like a 3 or 4 hour take over the restaurant thing,
Right.
But, and people like that I've been privileged to meet, like you, Adam Curry, people that are working in consciousness, Uri Geller, and one of his proteges that I've gotten to know over the last couple of years. Paula puts us on in group Zooms, and he only speaks, I think he only speaks Italian, and she's the translator for us because I only speak French.
Yeah.
It's we're coming together. Have you noticed that we're coming together? That there's a group of people worldwide that are connecting in a very profound and significant way to forward the momentum of truthful information, truth tellers, not just seekers and seers, but truth tellers.
This life has felt like to me an assignment.
Yeah.
I'm here on assignment. I didn't get married. I didn't have children.
Me either.
Because of that assignment. And I remember talking with Walter Boward about it. And I said, if all you're saying is true, and this was in 1990, I don't think I want to be having to deal with all the potential problems and responsibility. And this is, I think, my role in this, because he knew I was going to outlive him and I was going to inherit a lot of what he was doing, what we were doing, and what our plans were. And I'm glad I did not do that, because I'm seeing what is happening to families and children across the board, just from the effects of the breakdown of society. And I get calls every day about families breaking apart. In many cases, the children are being taken away from them. And there's just a mounting pressure on the family unit, because I knew the game plan was to destroy the family unit, and they were going to do depopulation through any means necessary, including getting rid of sexuality, which they're in the process of doing right now because they're distorting it completely. And I think I hope not, but the plan is that I was told, but by 2030, the sexual sense will be gone, and we'll have a society of sterile men and women, and a generation. And the future of the procreation issue will be done in labs to control population growth and so forth. And I'm seeing attacks that are happening, and I get calls from wives, women, guys that I know about their overall health and the collapse of just the mating game is totally different today than it was 10 years ago. It's completely, totally different now. I know women that cannot get pregnant at all. They're spending enormous amounts of money. There's all these fertility issues that are happening now, all of which are being done on purpose. All of that. I just didn't want to have to go through all that. So I felt in private discussions with people that, this is a type of assignment, and my role in it is having to do with the deployment of technology. So I was way more on the radio and talking openly about that many years ago. And instead I took a leaves of absence because I wanted to deal strictly with the whole issue of the deployment of disruptive technologies and assist in getting that done, which I've done a lot of. I've met with a lot of government. I've been through the Pentagon. I've been through the international banking houses and met with the billionaires and met with the tech heads and all that stuff. And the excuses for holding all this back.
Yeah.
I said a long time ago that, is society capable of handling itself with this type of power of technology, like what Tesla would give us, for instance? Can we handle that? And the general consensus of people that are the controlling elite of society is that we cannot. We cannot deal with it. Can you imagine what would happen if we could run your house with unlimited power and probably cost you $10 for the rest of your life? That you'd have your own power source, what that would do to jobs, what that would do to economies, what it would do to the relationships between other people, all the media ecological effects of disruptive technology, specifically energy. It's never discussed. It's always ones and zeros and profit. I've been in the meetings with government people, and they just don't get it. A lot of these people are just dumb fucks. They're just dumb fucks. They got into these high-powered positions, and they're walking backwards into their future, doing business as if we're in the 1940s, when we're at the breaking point where we can liberate ourselves, liberate the planet, and completely change how we deal with each other. I know this is idealistic, but it's also a probable reality. With the release of these technologies, you don't need war anymore.
No. And wouldn't that be unfortunate? Because, gee, that's such a money-making proposition, isn't it?
Right. Right. I was at the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, which is an offshoot of the Pentagon, and all they do is examine technologies for wargaming and how it could be utilized or enhanced to effectively make war cheaper, more efficient, and so forth. And the people that are making policy, that have all this money, they're some of the most uninformed people I've ever met in my life.
They're not just uninformed, James. They're amoral. They're amoral. I don't see a soul.
Yeah.
I don't. I look and I don't see a soul. I almost will, because of the trauma and the damage that I sustained personally in childhood, not only growing up in the environment that I did, where I saw more than I could process as a child, and then having my paradigm shift with my extraterrestrial connection, which was when I was 13. So exactly 50 years ago. About 2 weeks ago, it was 50 years. It challenged me intellectually, emotionally. It was, I would rather have someone who is damaged and survived it and became victorious over it and saw the light with the backdrop of the darkness as almost a scrim on a stage, and chose to live in the light and move to the light. I would rather have that than a soulless, heartless, cold, unfeeling cyborg that basically functions in a completely lawless way. And
I'll give you a very interesting sidebar to that, which is very important that the public know this. I know some of the most powerful women leaders in the world, and they were invited to go to a secret meeting with some of the top female inventors in the world. These are heads of companies, patents, engineers, scientists that worked on space modules, satellites, the developers of technology, the top women in the world. And they were asked to speak at this event, and all the leaders and pioneers were there. And the two people that I know that went there, both were American Indian. They were invited. They gave their speech, and I know who they are. And normally, they usually get a standing ovation after they finish talking. And what has happened is, when they did not get a standing ovation and they stepped down, they were met with 3 or 4 women that came down and sat with them, and they could not carry on an organic conversation without an iPad in front of their face.
Yep.
And they were chipped in the back of their ear.
Mm-hmm.
They were already cybernetic.
Yep.
They're already cybernetic. They're gone. A good portion of the decision makers, they're already gone.
Yep.
They've left the building.
Yep.
And they're completely different people now, and how they communicate is differently, and they're all integrated now into the machinery. Those people are hidden from public, and they're making global decisions on
global decisions. Yes,
that's right.
Yes, and we are truly living at the pinnacle of a complete alteration of life as we know it on this planet, and a handful of people are making all of the decisions. I wish we had another 2 hours, James. You have been one of the most fascinating, brilliant guests we've ever had on the show. You are the most perfect choice for us to launch year 2 of A World Awakening. I hope this was a wake-up call for everyone who tuned in tonight. And Tony and I want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us, my dear.
Yes,
we have to.
Thank you very much.
If you have any way for people to reach out to you, just we have like 1 minute left. If you let them know how to reach you,
they can find me in James Martinez Media on Anchor. That's where my podcast is being released. All the chapters of Operation Mind Control will be on there. All the guests that are be coming on there are people that I know that I've worked to or getting ready to speak. They're going to come out on there. They can also reach me on jamesmartinezmedia.net, and there's different icons and a contact page there. And I just want to thank you again for inviting me, and all your producers and so forth. I appreciate it, and I'm always here for you whenever you need me.
Bless your heart. Keep up the good work, my friend. Keep up the good work.
You got it.
Okay. For all of our viewers tonight, thank you for joining us on A World Awakening. The message from the Galactic family is keep the faith. Keep the faith. We can do this. We can do this. All right. Have a great